Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Empowering Musicians podcast. I am your host, Michael Manley, and I am very happy to welcome my friend and colleague, Jenni Kearns, to the podcast today. And Jenni and I go way back, and she's a fellow French horn player, and we met and connected on that level as stand partners in Lion King and in the Desert Winds, a group that we've both played with. And Jenni's had a really fascinating journey that's gone from serving through musical performance to now education and healing therapies that are based around sensory perception, such as sound and color. So welcome, Jenni, to the show.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. And why don't you just give us a little bit of a history of how you got into music as a career and then transitioned into therapy?
Well, going way back, I started piano at a young age and I loved music. And then when I started French horn in middle school band, I just fell in love with it. I have no idea why, but I thought it was the greatest thing on earth. Were you the same way?
I was. For me, it was very much specific to Star Wars. I knew it was the Star Wars instrument. And I was the Star Wars kid because I'm a little bit older. So, yeah.
Well, I have two older brothers, and they were percussion and trumpet, and they were like, you have to play the French horn because it's the most beautiful instrument. And I was like, okay.
Nice.
And I remember begging my dad to buy me a French horn when I was 12, and I got some beat up single F, and I thought it was the best thing on earth. Who knows why? But anyway, then I wanted to be a performer, went to college, did a couple years of music ed and performance, both because I was on scholarship and I thought that would be the smart move. But ironically, I took my elementary education class and hated it.
Oh, wow.
And I dropped my major. I dropped my ed major. So I just got a performance degree. And then I went to get my master's in performance and was like, I'm just going to play French horn. That's it. That's all I want to do. So then I got into blast and did some tours in the U.S. I did a Japan tour, another U.S. tour. Then I ended up in Vegas when I met you.
Yeah.
And
I have to ask you, did Blast ever do a Vegas show? Because it feels like a very Vegas show.
No, I wish they would have, though.
Yeah.
Because by the end of it, I wanted to be in one place. I was tired of touring, and living in hotels. So that's where I ended up in Vegas. I was like, okay, I'm going to stay here and settle down. I don't want to go anywhere for a long time. So that's when I decided to go back to school because I met other performers in Lion King and Phantom of the Opera who were teachers during the day, played shows at night, had houses, had a lot of stability. And I was like, that's what I want. So I had to go back to school to get that ed degree, another year and a half. And then I started teaching elementary music, which is the best thing ever. I love it. But when I was 21, I hated it.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So now that's what you're doing for your main gig, right? Is you're teaching elementary music.
Right. I love it so much. I love kids, and
that's great.
You get to act silly with them and share the joy of music with kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and do you? Everyone, but
yeah. And at that age, what instruments are you working with? Are you working with group instruments, or are you starting kids on flutes and clarinets at that age, or is it not until later?
No, we just start with rhythms and the Orff xylophones and anything percussion, singing. If we have them, we'll start keyboards. If I have a keyboard lab.
Yeah.
Or if I put one together, and they love that. And if they have Apple products, then we could do GarageBand, which I did at Allison.
Okay.
And learn how to, make music and produce music.
That's fun.
It is fun.
That's great. And so from Las Vegas, you decided to move back across the country you're based in Chattanooga now, right?
Yes, I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee. After 11 years in Vegas and performing in shows and doing all of that, it was actually my mom passing away was the catalyst of me looking at my life and saying, okay, what do I want to do, for the rest of my life? Do I want to stay in Vegas? And I always wanted to study music therapy. And I looked into it, and that's a whole nother 4-year degree.
Right.
Which they have a music therapy bachelor's program here at UT Chattanooga. But I was like, the time, the money, more school. And then as I was looking at that, I ran into sound therapy. And the more I read about it, the more I learned, I thought this is so cool and I love it. And I just started devouring information about frequencies and hertz and healing and this whole other side of music and notes and almost like theory that transitions to how it can heal somebody.
Yeah. I mean, that's fascinating. And, I have friends who have music therapy degrees, and I think it's a really worthy study and field. The problem is there's not a lot of institutional support for music therapists. Like if you get a job as a music therapist, there's not a lot of pay. It's not very well paid. And they're often the first things cut if you're working in an old folks home or something like that. Or I shouldn't say old folks home. I should say like an elderly care facility. That's bad to say that. But so anyway, but but what you're doing is much more entrepreneurial. So I've been focusing a lot on musicians who have sort of developed their own businesses. And so this is exciting that you decided to go into this. So what did you learn about frequency and sound healing that you may didn't know before when you were just performing music and teaching?
Well, there's so much to it. I'll start with learning about how there were certain people in the past who were doing research on the frequency of everything. Like, I think it was Peter Guy Manners. He took the frequency of like trees and every single type of flower, which speaks to like herbalism and, plants as medicine. And then the human body and the organs and the chakras and, everything you could possibly think of. So they have all this research and know what things vibrate at when they're healthy or when they're unhealthy. So then you can take the frequencies of a tuning fork and know where that specific hertz will help, either emotional or physical. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I have one big question.
Okay.
So I think of frequency as something that I can perceive with my auditory nerves, right? If you talk to me, like I'm looking at this plant across the room that I inherited when I bought my house, and it's a really, really big kind of palmy kind of plant. And it's still with me. I don't water it as much as I should, but I'm going to give it some love today. But like you're saying, I could figure out what the frequency of that plant is somehow.
It's talking to you. See, you can hear it. It's saying, feed me.
Yes, feed me. So, so how does one figure out the frequency of a tree or a plant? Like, what is that?
We have certain measuring devices, and I don't know. I would actually like to learn how to do that because I think it's interesting, like crystals or I don't know, anything. But audible frequency has to be 20 hertz or higher.
So there are other frequencies that are not heard.
Yeah. So I think it goes up to around 200. I may be wrong on that. But I know that if it's below 20, it's not audible. Mm-hmm. But frequencies are already used in Western medicine, like ultrasounds.
Right.
And they have other devices now for tinnitus and things like that they use in the hospitals. Limited, but those are not audible frequencies. So tuning fork therapy and music or sound therapy uses a lot of audible frequencies based on this research that's been done to say, okay, two things will vibrate together. What's it called? Entrainment. And so if you're playing a healthy frequency near the heart, then the physics of entrainment will say that your heart will begin to entrain with that vibration and that sound wave and become in sync and have an effect on your healing.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So take me through what a sound healing session might be as far as like diagnosing a problem and then treating a problem.
Okay. Well, when someone comes in, I ask them, what they want me to focus on, emotional or physical or both. And usually they have a main thing like it may be one lady comes in with Parkinson's and she has tremors. So she comes in for the muscle relief. She says it's the only thing that will pause her tremors.
Wow.
For a short time. And so she really enjoys that. Some people have anxiety and stress. And so I'll write that down and I'll kind of make a plan in my head of where I want to put the tuning forks and which sounds that I'll use on them. So then I play a track that I make these background tracks that are like healing music and different binaural beats and hertz, and I layer these sounds in just in the background. So they're getting that added layer of sound healing to what I'm doing. And then the first part of it is I play the sound bowls, which are pure tones with some harmonics, but a bass tone of C, which is like your grounding and security to make people relax. And then I lead them through a guided meditation because I really want to get them into that theta state, which is, your subconscious meditative state, so they can receive more of the frequencies and healing. Then I will gather the tuning forks that I think will help them. And so the regular tuning forks will go by the ears and they do different things. And when you hear them, they're very powerful and pure. And they activate the vagus nerve, if you know anything about that.
To me, vagus nerve is just somebody who lives in Vegas who's very ballsy. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, the vagus nerve, when it's activated, it will instigate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is what relieves our stress and makes us relaxed and calm and peaceful.
Okay.
Another thing the tuning forks have been proven to do is stimulate nitric oxide, which does basically the same thing. It helps release, dopamine and all those good chemicals and calm your stress responses. So I'll go on with tuning forks by the ears, and then the weighted ones you can actually put on the body.
Wow.
So the bottom, I wish I had one. They're all I have a studio. I'm at home right now. But when you ding it, the bottom of it, you set on the body, and that's where I can go into specific muscles, or if they have knee pain, wherever. I can go all over the body. And I also use like the Chinese meridian lines and points. So I almost always do the bottoms of the feet.
Okay.
So if you know about reflexology, like I'll definitely just hit all over the feet because that'll go up all the meridians into the body.
And how do you know which frequencies to use or which tuning forks, or does it matter?
That's part of my training, and I have my set of tuning forks there, and I actually have them labeled because there's so many that I might forget, and I'm learning as I go. I don't have them all memorized, but yeah.
Great. Well, I had a question that just came in the chat, which is somebody is asking, how do you deal with folks that have metal rods or pins in their body?
I will go ahead and do it and just say, hey, if I place the fork near it, I'll say, just let me know how that feels. And if they're uncomfortable, then I won't do it, or I'll maybe go around the area. But I haven't had a problem with that.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, and then what is the effect that somebody could expect after sound therapy?
At the least, people feel really relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
They've taken an hour out of their day to de-stress. I kind of relate it to like a massage, but it's like a sonic frequency massage.
Yeah.
They have this huge drum that makes these low reverberations, and I drum all over people, which is ancient and shamanic and native for clearing energy. But a lot of people love it just for that, just for the stress relief. Some people, like I said, it helps them with like muscle tension or knee pain and joint pain. And I'll do a lot of weighted forks all over their bodies if it's, muscle or that kind of pain. Anxiety and all sorts of things.
That's fascinating. What is the difference between that and, like, say, a sound bath? And tell us about that whole sound bath world, because that's becoming much more popular now, and I see it more often.
I'm always explaining this because people think a sound bath is sound therapy, and I do both.
Yeah.
So I want to have individual clients come to me, and I can address their specific needs. And I do a lot of the tuning forks, and I have all that time, to focus on them and place the frequencies into their body where, they need them. The group sound bath is sort of like, it's just a meditation / think of like a yoga class where people come in, they lay down, and then I have all these healing instruments, and I'm just washing the room and all these different healing sounds. And then I like to go around to each individual and drum over them, and I'll do a few tuning forks, but with a group, I don't have that much time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just, do a little bit. I'll go to everybody's ears, and they'll get, maybe a perfect fifth. They'll just get a little bit of that, or however much I can do for an hour. And then, but people really love those too.
Yeah. And I noticed on your website that you do distance therapy as well. So people don't necessarily have to be right with you, right?
Yeah. There is, it's called, have you heard Einstein's quote where it's like spooky action from a distance?
I'm not familiar with that.
No, where they've, some people have proved that when you send that energy healing, it'll go, anywhere. It's not limited by distance or time.
Yeah. I certainly know a little bit about that from a book that I've read called, I actually don't know the name of it, E Squared, I think it's called, but it's by Pam Grout. And she talks about manifesting, and, it sounds really, granola and earthy crunchy, and it sounds like completely far-fetched. But then she talks about, like, on the quantum level, we don't understand the world. It doesn't behave according to our physical understanding, right? Like a particle can be in two places at once, right? So then you think about these things and you think, well, actually, none of this is as far-fetched as it seems when I consider that I'm looking at everything through the limited lens of my senses, right? That there's a whole understanding of the universe that is beyond that I think we don't understand. And for me, that's plausible, right? Like it's not hard to understand that, like, we're only limited by our five senses, and that there's probably a whole level of the way the world operates that we're not aware of. And so I totally can buy into that as well.
Yeah, it's tricky to understand because most of these truths and knowledge and wisdom is invisible. And it's hard for us to grasp that and believe in that.
Yeah. So as far as like the origins, because you mentioned a lot of different cultural references like shamanism and things like this, is there a specific culture that leads to this, or is it a mix of everything? Like, is this specifically Eastern? Is it specifically, Middle Eastern? Is it Western? Like, where does this whole therapy come from?
I don't think I know. I mean, I would say it's a big mix of what I've learned. Like you have the Tibetan bowls, the metal bowls, then you have, the crystal bowls, and you have influences from India and the Native Americans, and shamanism and Aboriginal tribes in Africa and Australia. And, I have some instruments that are like natural seeds, seed pods that you shake, and it adds texture to whatever you're doing, which is thought to like break up energy so that you can release it and then absorb more of the healing frequencies coming in.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I have a sound of a Tibetan prayer bowl here that I love to just play, and I think it might be a concert F. I'm not sure, but do you have different tuned bowls? Like, how many keys do you have, I guess?
So that brings me to something that excited me when I was learning about sound therapy or sound healing, is that, like, basically the chakras, the 7 chakras, are the C scale.
Really?
Yeah, basically. I mean, there are a lot of variations on that, like the accidentals, for example. C sharp are both the root chakra, red. D is sacral, orange. E, solar plexus, yellow. F, wait, what's your bowl?
I think it's a concert F.
Okay, so that would be the root. F is heart, G is throat, A is third eye, and B is crown.
Wow. So it's literally the concert G scale is what you're saying.
Wouldn't that be F?
Or concert F, yeah.
You're such a French horn player.
I know. I'm like translating in my head. But you said C, so it would be concert. Yeah, so C would be our G scale, right?
Yeah.
So if I played a G scale on my horn, I'd be like, oh, that's cool. So what's that?
You'd be cleansed from
I would
bottom
be
to top.
cleansed. Yeah. I've been I was wondering about this as well, because the harmonics, I work a lot with harmonics in my horn playing, and I'm currently trying to develop, or I'm currently developing a method for beginners, returners, and recoverers, because there's no great first step method for French horn. Like the Farkas book is a great book for people that know a little bit about how to play the French horn. There's nothing out there that starts from square one. And I learned this from doing parapro work in the school systems and just seeing that like these method books are they're not working, right, for like beginners. And you know, they're written in such a way that kids can all play together some piece of music. And so there's a lot of staccato notes or separated notes. There's nothing about slurring or how to begin a buzz or anything like this. So I'm like, okay, I need to write this book because there's nothing out there. And the basis is doing slurs on the harmonic series, right? Because if you can get from note to note without using your fingers and with just using the air, then that's going to train you this relationship between air and lips, right? And that's the key. So anyway, that's all explanation to say that I've been working a lot with the harmonic series, and you know, it's fascinating because it does kind of describe a scale eventually, but there's all these like out of tune frequencies in the middle, and but those are all the same as the overtone series too, right? So yes. So do you work with the harmonic series at all, or is that just part of the overtones and the bowls that you work with, and how does that play a role?
I actually don't think too much about harmonics. I know which instruments I use are pure tones versus ones that create harmonics, which the harmonics are great for healing, but I don't focus on them specifically. Like I just know that if I want a specific tone, I'm going to use a tuning fork.
So a tuning fork is a pure sound, so there's no overtones with a tuning fork.
There are overtones, but if you direct it, you know, it has like the two prongs, and when you direct it into the ear like that, you're going to get the pure tone. But if you ding it and you, let's say, hold it over somebody or use it over the body, then you're going to hear all those overtones, if that makes sense.
That's wild. So as far as other instruments that are more like, what categories of instruments are more pure sounds versus those with lots of overtones? I would say the French horn has lots of overtones in the sound. Yes. But that the clarinet maybe less so, I don't know, or the flute, I don't know.
Yeah, I can hear that. I don't know for sure. Well, here I have my bowls.
Now, see, those, I was going to ask you about these because my Tibetan bowl is a metal bowl.
So this is crystal or quartz.
It's great.
And it has a very pure tone.
Yeah.
And then with the other bowls that I have, I can, you know, create the intervals. And different intervals have different healing properties also. So
you might play like a perfect fourth or a fifth of two bowls at once.
Yes, I use perfect fifth a lot because that is just super grounding. Like if I have a C and a G fork by people's ears, I almost always use that one to get people grounded and just feeling, you know, settled and relaxed. I use them in the beginning, or a unison or an octave. They'll be relaxing and just kind of, you know, when people are just starting the session, I'll always use those. But during a sound bath, I'll definitely add in some dissonance. Because if it's just, you know, the healing nebula of sounds, it just, people will just fall asleep.
Yeah.
And you don't want that. Actually, you want them to be in that theta brainwave state, just before sleep where they're still receiving the fullest amount of vibrations. So I'll add in texture, the drums, the seed pods, and dissonance to because that has a healing quality of breaking up energy.
Interesting. And I've been reading a little bit lately about the flow state, right? And this is, that optimal state where you kind of lose a sense of time, or you're so focused on a task, whether if we're musicians and we're practicing and we just get lost in that moment, or you're an athlete that's running 20 miles and you just get into the zone. Is the theta state related to that, or is that something more, I guess, more conscious, I suppose, the flow state?
I don't know. It's probably what our super high rev state is beta, and then alpha is like us right now, everyday waking. And then low state alpha into theta. Theta, all I know is like meditation. So I'm wondering if low is probably low alpha.
Yeah.
I would say, which I also use therapeutic drumming in my sound baths. I make these tracks, and I've learned a lot about that. There's a guy, I think his name's Jeff Strong, and he only does drumming, therapeutic drumming. So 111 beats per minute is a low alpha state.
Really? Okay.
Yes. But it can't just be like da-da-da-da-da. It has to be varied. So he likes to do, I think it's a mamba or some, I forgot which one it's called. This yeah.
Yeah, that's 111. Interesting.
So I've created some tracks that have that BPM, and then it'll go slow down into 80 beats per minute. So it's actually 16 notes, I think, at 80 beats per minute. And that supposed to get people from low alpha into theta.
Wow, that's fascinating.
There's so much to learn. There's so much out there. Like when I learned that, I added that into my sound bath. So I was like,
yeah. Cool. Well, it sounds like you've made a lot of progress in learning a lot of this stuff. How long did it take you to learn, and where did you learn about all this?
Well, before I left Vegas, I had a mentor who does energy work, and he's a Reiki Master. Okay. So I started learning more about energy healing and the chakras. And then I did an online course with a College of Sound Healing out of the UK.
Okay.
I did like 3 of the 5 parts. I didn't do all of them because I was sort of picking and choosing, because there's so much on the internet that's like, oh, become a certified sound healer, and for like $10.
Yeah.
So I was really looking to see what do I want to learn, and are these people legit? So from that place, I learned about tuning forks, and I learned about the intervals, and then I went to another place online and I actually got certified from them. To me, it wasn't very legit, to be honest, but I kind of wanted to have that title. But I find that, like you said, you can have a bachelor's degree in music therapy, and you're probably still learning on your own, applying the new things that you learn, learning from your patients, and adding it in. And that's what I'm doing with sound therapy, because I just want to help people, and I want it to be proven and scientific if I can. So
that's great. Well, as I mentioned to you before we started this podcast, I'm in a coaching group, and I know that my mentor, Martin, is really super into sound healing, and would love to have you on in one of our sessions, our Zoom sessions, if you're open to it, because I think it'd be really fun for you to take us all through a sound bath. Yeah, that would be great. And I have to ask you, like, has any of this changed how you approach your French horn playing, and are you still playing, and how is it affected? How have those things affected each other, if at all?
I haven't been playing French horn.
Ah, okay.
I had every intention, and then I'm just following the flow.
Yeah. Well, and it sounds like you've got a lot on your plate, right? You've got the sound healing business, and then you're also teaching full time. So,
yes. And I really miss it. The other day I was thinking like, I was having like a bad day, and I was like, in the past, I used to have a rehearsal to look forward to, or a concert like with the Desert Winds, and you could just go to this other world. You pick up your horn and you just start blasting. But it was ironic because I was on my way to a sound therapy session. And as soon as I started that sound therapy session, I was in that other place, with that person and with the bowls and with all those sounds. And I was like, it's kind of like you go somewhere else.
Yeah. So it might be replacing that for you in the same way. And I know that I've gone through periods. I've had a very strange career where I've gone from playing to completely other, administrative type executive work, back to playing. And I've had periods of my life where I just didn't touch my French horn. And I just felt like I was not really in balance. And there's something about it that for me is like a meditative kind of practice, that even if I don't have a concert to look forward to, or to have on my calendar, like just the act of playing and warming up is like somehow very centering for me in that way. So, and I have other friends who were not that way. Like I have a friend who was a professional clarinet player and then became a therapist and just put the clarinets away and never look back. Right. But for me, it definitely has a centering effect that I notice when I don't do it. I don't think I'm as happy when I'm not playing.
Yeah.
But for you, it sounds like sound has taken a different form in a way.
It has. It's beautiful, amazing.
Yeah.
I love it. And I want to get to a point where I can hold workshops. I want to develop a curriculum and teach people how to do it as well.
That's fascinating. Can you share one story of like surprise or transformation where you saw the sound therapy that you do just have a really amazing effect on someone? Like, do you have any great stories along those lines?
I think the biggest moment for me was the lady I had with Parkinson's.
Yeah.
She came in and she was such a nice lady, and you could visibly see her. I think it was like her left hand and her left foot or ankle. And she had that for like over a year, and never ever had she stopped trembling or tremoring or whatever. And I was like, well, let's see how you feel, how this works with you. And I remember in the session, I noticed that she was not shaking for almost the whole entire time. And then when she got done, she was like in tears. So she was like, I haven't had a moment of, relief from this constant feeling. I'm like, how does that feel? That's got to be uncomfortable and painful for your muscle to be tense like that all the time. So then when she left, I was like, oh my gosh, I had a moment to myself.
Yeah, that's really inspiring. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I know that you're going to have to run soon, but how do people find you, and what's the best way to reach you if people want to learn more?
They can learn more on my website. I spend a lot of time putting a lot of nerdy information, which people probably don't read all of it, but it's there if they want to, it's thetatherapy.us.
Okay. thetatherapy.us.
And I have a lot of information, and then you can always contact me from there. My events are there, all my type of bookings that I offer are there. So
great.
Blog posts that are interesting. So.
And do you have a Facebook group yet, or is that something that you're going to create?
I don't have a group. I just have my page.
Okay. So you have a page on Facebook.
Yeah.
So Jenni Kearns, and the business is Theta Therapy.
Yes.
And the website is thetatherapy.us.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing your afternoon with us. And I've learned so much, and I'm looking forward to learning more from you about all this, and maybe experiencing it more deeply myself.
Yeah. I'm going to be in Vegas in June.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
I think I bring all my little friends, but I don't know if I can.
Yeah, that's a lot to carry, right?
I know it is.
Well, I have my Tibetan prayer bowl here, so you're welcome to it when you come over.
Okay, I actually do want to hear it. Is it really big or small?
It's small. It's like this big, so like about this big. And the Tibetan bowls, unlike the crystal bowls, I find have a lot of harmonics, right? There's tons of harmonics and overtones. I don't know if you have this experience, but like there's like a wooden kind of stick, and I can get it to vibrate, but then it vibrates so much that it starts to kind of clang, and I don't know how to like sustain the sound. It's like an art form, I guess.
That is the hardest instrument to play.
It really is.
Out of all of them, because I have one that's my favorite. It's a green heart F. And I play it all the time. I'm always trying to perfect it, and it still goes like the shing.
Yeah, that's the sound. Yeah.
It's just really tricky.
Well, you'll have to give me a sound bowl playing lesson when you're here, and I will look forward to seeing you in June. And again, thank you so much. And if you haven't joined our Empowering Musicians Facebook group, please join Empowering Musicians Facebook group. You can also find this podcast on YouTube and on Spotify and Audible. And thank you, Jenni, so much for your time. And I look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you, Michael. I love what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. And we'll see you soon, Jenni.
Okay, take care.